Thank you all very much for joining us for the second of the NHS themed film nights. We had a great session a fortnight ago, and tonight promises to be just as interesting and thought-provoking. Tonight's session is going to be recorded, so if you'd rather not appear on the recording, please do feel free to stop the video and turn off your video camera, and I would request that everyone stays muted until it's time for questions later on. So tonight's program's being brought to you by Southampton Keep Our NHS Public, or SKONP, and it's in collaboration with the students from Solent University's television production course. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with SKONP's work, but just in case there's people who haven't heard of SKONP, Southampton Keep Our NHS Public is the local branch of Keep Our NHS Public, which is a national organisation which campaigns to protect and develop the NHS as a public health service, available according to need, free at the point of use. And it campaigns to sort of keep it that way and against it being privatized. Please do join SKONP's mailing list at the email address, which is right behind me. I hope you can see it clearly, skeepnhspublic@gmail.com. And that way you can keep in touch with all the events that they organize and all the campaigning that they do, and do please get involved in their work. They're also on Facebook, so you can search for them there. So as I said, you will have had a notification to say that this is going to be recorded, but feel free to turn off your cameras if you so wish. So tonight's program will be for around an hour, and we'll just start with a little bit of a brief background about how the project came about and how the films that you're going to be watching tonight, how they came into being. We'll watch two short films, the first one of which will be Blood Donor Services, and the second one will be Windrush. After each of the film, you'll have the opportunity to meet some of those people who are involved, the students that made the film, and a couple of people who were actually featured in the film. And that's when we hope that there'll be time for questions and discussions. So how did this whole project come about? In 2018, when it was 70th birthday of the NHS being set up in 1948, SKONP, or Southampton Keep Our NHS Public, set up a stall outside the hospital and invited passers-by and people entering the hospital to sign a very large birthday card. The response was overwhelming, and the messages that were left on the card included so many personal testimonies, really touching stories of what the NHS meant to the people and how it had helped them, or what it meant for those who worked for the NHS. So this sparked an idea with the team to start recording some oral histories and to produce a series of films that would tell this story, take it to people that wouldn't know about such sort of amazing stories, and also a way to celebrate the contributions of the NHS and its people. So their vision was that they could capture some interviews with patients and staff, and then produce a series of films, and that they would be able to then share this with wider audiences. And finally, the films that were created and the raw material would all be deposited in public archives at the city archives. So the team approached the tutors of the BA in television production course at Solent University, Tony Steiger, who's here with us today, and Kate O'Driscoll, who was here with us last time, just to discuss with them the possibility of involving their students in making these films. Tony and Kate were really enthusiastic. They responded and very keen to get involved. And what they did was to build this project into the students' coursework, into their practical part of it. Working in groups, the students would produce a series of films looking at different aspects of the NHS. And as we all know, the students had just got started with the project in early 2020 when the pandemic struck and restrictions and lockdown came into force. So they had started the filming and had filmed some of the interviews, but had to complete the rest of the work entirely under lockdown conditions from their homes, not being able to meet each other, not being able to access the university's editing suite or software, etc. And they did all of that sort of completely remotely. But you will see in the final films you watch tonight, despite all these constraints, the films that they produced are of excellent quality. In some cases, because they couldn't film further and couldn't collect some of the material that they had planned to in their vision for the films, they just adapted magnificently, and they found these creative solutions and made these amazing films, which were different from perhaps what they wanted, but either way, they were just amazing films. SKONP also applied for and received a community chest grant from Southampton City Council to help disseminate these films after they were produced at public screenings. And there are a couple of those planned at City Eye and God's Tower, but that will have to wait until things settle down in the way when we are all able to meet again. I'd like to pass on to Tony Steiger to just talk a little bit about the students' work from his perspective as their tutor. Tony is a producer and director at People Media Productions. Tony, would you like to say a few words? Tony, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, Tony. There seems to be a problem with your microphone. We've got you unmuted on the system, but there's no sound coming through. We still can't hear you. Perhaps we should try coming back to Tony after the film, Padmina.
Okay, yeah, okay, okay. I'll just introduce the first film that we're going to be watching is titled Blood Donor Services. It's directed by James Howard and produced by Melissa Lacey. Cinematography is by Harry Gom, and the editor is Teddy House. And it features Mike Doswell, area manager for Solent Blood Donation Services. And after the film, we'd like to talk to some of those people involved. Jim.
Up and down the country, many thousands of men and women give a little of their blood once or twice a year to help others who need it. It is a small kindness, but an important one.
My name's Jenny Wellen, I'm from Southampton. My first blood donation was in November. The reason I wanted to donate is just to know that I'm helping out in some way, doing my part in case anybody ever needs my blood.
My name's Mike Doswell and I'm the area manager for the Solent area within NHS Blood and Transplant. I feel it's vitally important that people work in the NHS, and I think on a daily basis we get a buzz from the fact that we are working to help save and improve patients' lives.
No one will ever know, for the men and women who give their blood do so voluntarily and without condition, confident that sometime, somewhere, it will be used to help make a sick person well again.
My first donation actually was quite pleasant, as weird as that sounds. I was expecting it to be impersonal, that they just want you in, put you on a needle, get your blood, off you go. But they were very lovely, they were very friendly, they kept me calm the whole time.
Fundamentally, it is the knowledge that we are part of a critical process to ensure that acute and chronic patients get the best service they possibly can. As on an individual basis, there are staff in this clinic and myself who obviously either have family members or friends who've received blood and blood products themselves. And of course, we know on a personal level how much difference that can make to that patient.
Quickly done and perhaps easily forgotten. But for the patient about to be operated on, this simple gift of blood may tip the balance between life and death.
All the staff were lovely. My lady Karen that was working with me was brilliant. From the moment she saw me, she was smiling. And like I said, she treated me like a friend. She kind of chatted, there was no awkward silences, it didn't feel like I was in a hospital giving blood. She was just having a conversation, telling me about her family, talked about my family, and she was just lovely. She made me feel like I'd be happy to go back and do it again.
Thus the never-ending cycle goes on. For every drop of blood used to save life, more must be found. The blood transfusion service can never rest.
In the past year, there have been just over 10,000 whole blood donations in this donor centre. Once we find that donors have given beyond 5 times, we tend to regard them as a regular donor who's quite committed. But in those first 5 donations, it can be very much down to the customer service we give and the experience they receive, what we call the donor experience.
For this is the secret of blood transfusion. That one man, a healthy man, gives his blood so that sometime, somewhere, amongst people he may never even know, another life will be saved.
Okay, so as you saw, the students have done a fantastic job here of knitting together archive film, as well as sort of filming people who are actually doing it and giving their impressions of what it actually means to donate blood. Before we go on to questions, I just wanted to check if James and Melissa, I can see James's name, but I can't find whether Melissa is in the audience, or indeed whether Mike Doswell is in the audience. I haven't spotted their names, so Ginny and Jane, can you see if they are there?
James is here.
James, oh hello James.
Hello.
Great. Would you like to say a few words about the film, about, you know, from your perspective, about developing and making the film?
Firstly, I'd like to open with, I am so thankful that the uni was approached by this project, as despite the challenges, it is one of the pieces I am most proud of that I've ever made. And part of that is because of how much of a good cause it is. A lot of our drive and intention while making the project that revolved around 2 things. Firstly, giving appreciation for the hard and constant work of the specific department and the staff who work within blood donation of the NHS. But we also had a side note of trying to alleviate people's concerns or show how easy it is to give blood, in the hopes that anyone who sees this would be inclined to donate more. And part of that So when we were making the project, or approached with it, we were actually told we had a previous blood donation nurse to speak to. Unfortunately, that fell through, but we managed to negotiate NHS access through myself offering to donate blood, and then we filmed that. And it was my first donation. It was an absolutely amazing experience, and I think a unique one, because I'm not sure if they've ever had somebody direct themselves donating blood. It was we were actually very lucky with what we done, because we managed to film all of it the day before lockdown was announced. So that was incredibly lucky, and I wish that Teddy was here, because honestly, we had the idea of mixing the archive and the normal footage together from very early on, but without him, I never would have been able to piece this together as magnificently as he has done.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, James, because that was an amazing film, but also it was very interesting to hear from you about how it came about, but also how it felt for you as a blood donor as well. And that definitely comes through the film, but also your personal testimony now. And also how you actually managed to do this under circumstances, you know, with all the lockdown. So did you edit, or did you edit and create all this from just what you had at homes, because presumably you couldn't access the college?
Well, Teddy the editor had the editing software, so he was doing a lot of it. It was a lot of back and forth, me detailing what I want to him doing that, and then a second version with his own flair on it, us negotiating the difference between them. And it probably took us about best part of a month to put it together, which is actually the quickest editing process I've ever had, especially with something of this complexity. It was, the idea actually spawned from Tony and Kate telling me to go watch this particular piece of archive. And then we came about the idea of using myself to mirror and match up the journey that the donator, or the old gentleman in that, goes between. And we thought that was appropriate because it shows how the work of the NHS, while it has changed, it's never ending, and the staff are just as invaluable today as they were back then, and so is the actual gift of donating.
Padmini, Tony's gone out and he's come back in, so should we try Tony again?
Absolutely, brilliant, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Helen.
Okay.
Tony, do you want to unmute?
Try again, Tony.
Tony, in case you haven't already tried it, it might be worth opening the computer settings and seeing about your mic sensitivity. That can sometimes auto adjust without you affecting it.
Okay, try that, Tony, but in the meantime, I would like to open up to questions from the audience. So if anyone's got any questions, if you could raise your hands in the participants list. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen and click on the participants list, and you'll get an option to raise your hand, or just wave, and my wonderful friends here will help me identify who's speaking. So I spotted Jane's hand first. Jane Freeland, do you want to go first? And Anna Ridhart, I've spotted you as well, and I'll keep an eye on the others. Jane, carry on.
Okay, so I just wanted to add to what James was saying, because about the timelessness of the blood donor service and the continuity of it. And I mean, there's that very, very moving quote when he talks about how this simple gift that one man gives so that someone somewhere, among people that he may never know, will come to health. And it reminded me, it goes further than that. I hadn't realized quite how extraordinary this gift idea is, until I was in Nicaragua once, and I was traveling in a little plane, and a Mary Noel nun came and sat next to me, and we exchanged where we were from and so on. And then she said, "Oh, you're from England. Oh, I absolutely love and admire your gift society, your blood donor service, because, you know, we sell our blood, and that makes all the difference. It means that we have no control over it. But this way, because it's a gift, it's controlled, nobody can contaminate it." And every time I watch this little bit of film, it reminds me of that as well. So it goes beyond the UK. You know, and a lot of people in the States, for instance, would like very much that their society would be a gift society. And it is the epitome of the health service itself. The whole health service is supposed to work that way too. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. That really was really touching, the way, you know, somebody such a long way away sort of pointed that out. And I think, you know, those of us who live here kind of don't realize how different things are elsewhere in the world, where people actually sell the blood, and there can be all sorts of other complications to go with that. Thank you, Jane. The next person I'd seen was, I could see it was Anna Ridgehall. I just spotted your hand.
I've got a slightly different voice to Anna, but so it's David. But James, it's interesting to see your experience there, and looking at the film. Although it was, of course, it was 1957, and somewhat dated by that, with the talk about there goes the man, and the man is the and that. What was your experience? Sorry, and the other bit of that film was where they had the banks of a donor with a nurse and a donor and a nurse. So it was a public sort of ward type of thing. Was your experience that of being conscious of other people giving blood when you did it, or were you compartmentalized into a room that was just you? And do you have any sort of feel as to the gender balance of the donors that whilst you were doing your session?
Well, during my session, due to the NHS's filming requirements of us, we were given a corner bed, because anyone who didn't consent to being filmed, especially with the nature of what the filming or the subject that we're filming, they wanted them to either not be in the shot or be blurred enough to not be able to identify them. If I remember correctly, I believe I was in the corner, there was an empty bed next to me and 2 filled beds next to that, and the other side of the room, all 5 or 6 of the beds were actually filled entirely. It was probably about 60% men, 40% women there. I remember there was 2 men donating platelets instead of actual blood, but part of my reasoning for donating, if I'm perfectly honest, there was 2 reasons. Firstly, I had never donated before, and it was something that I had always debated about doing, because I saw it as a thing of it's a gift that you give somebody else. I never know when I'm going to need a possible blood donation. Therefore, I never know when somebody else could possibly need it. But if blood is constantly in demand, by me doing a service which would only take 15 minutes out of my life, I could be giving somebody another 40 or 50 years in their life. Therefore, I saw it as a valuable experience, and I was happy to do it regardless of whether they gave us filming permission. But when we was talking to, when Mel and I were talking to the NHS staff and the area manager, one of their big concerns was the filming of it itself, because we would have to get firstly a donor to consent, and secondly, there was a lot of rules the NHS had about not being able to film certain parts of treatments. So I cleverly thought of the idea of booking up a donation and then saying to them, I've already got this donation booked, would you mind if we filmed it? Because then it's kind of going around them, but also they consent to us bringing in the filming equipment. And they were very happy to do that. And I was just praying every single day before, for about a week before, that I was going to be healthy enough to actually donate, because it would have ended the entire production if I wasn't able to.
That's pretty amazing, and it, you know, it was an excellent sort of film, and also it then becomes so much more personal to you, as you said. You know, you're directing a film about you. I've got one more question. I've got a raised hand from Abelardo. Abe, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. Jane mentioned the comment by this nun that people sell their blood and therefore they may not be healthy when they give it. Unless Jane's case, she was perfectly healthy. Good job too. But I imagine there must be lots of checks done beyond that, and it could be pretty expensive. So in countries where people sell their blood, it could be screened if they did all these tests. Maybe it is just too expensive, they don't have the technology, I don't know. But I recall many years ago, I recall the news more recently, of course, but many years ago, a batch of blood was bought, or maybe blood components was bought, which had some virus, whatever it was, I don't know the details, and hemophiliac people have suffered ever since. So it shows the importance of all these tests, even if it costs a lot of money. I wonder if anyone can provide a bit more information on that. Thank you.
I can see, I don't know if anyone's, Jane, did you want to respond to Abe's? I can see Ian's iPad yes, I've spotted your hand. Jane, did you want to respond to Abe, and then we'll go to Ian?
Yeah, just briefly, what happened, and it's come up again in the news quite recently, because the case has taken, the people concerned, it was contaminated blood plasma, from which factor 8, which is a product that's given to haemophiliacs to help the blood clotting. And in fact, this particular batch of plasma, there were quite several batches, in fact, were given to haemophiliacs, and they contracted hepatitis B and became very sick, and in some cases died. And the case for compensation has taken this long. It was, I can't remember. I think the case first began in 2018, but it happened, as Abby remembers, a lot further back than that. And now obviously there's much more careful checks on the blood, but it is expensive, and therefore it's something that this was a batch of blood which was brought in from the United States, where you sell your blood. And I remember being in Greece once, and there were people traveling around Greece making their money by giving blood periodically and selling their blood, and then that took on a little bit further. So it's a common practice, and we need to check the blood very carefully. And it's only because we've got this kind of public service and the public ethos that we will continue to do that. If it gets to be privatized, then it will fail.
I'll bring in, I've got the name showing up as Ian's iPad. You've been raising your hands. Would you like to, whether it's related to Abe's question or something else?
Right. Hi. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. James, I mean, very, very interesting film. And it's just awkward or difficult because of the constraints of the NHS. You weren't actually able to give a very clear picture of the whole process of donating. Jane's talking about testing. Before we even get to testing, you're screened personally, or you should be, face to face by either a doctor or a nurse checking your medical history. And this really just wasn't shown on that film, which I think, though, James, is because of the constraints of the NHS filming, which if they get their, excuse my language, their heads out of their bums, they could reassure people much more about the safety of the NHS. And we do test, but we test right from the start of the donors or the, you know, the potential donor coming through, where you're given literature to read, your HB is checked to make sure that you're not anemic. You're then, if you're a brand new donor, given a very, very detailed medical questionnaire and face-to-face interview before you even get onto a bed. So very, very good film. Very much about please come and donate, not what the actual process is, which is, you know, James says, is the constraints of NHS filming. But it is very safe, and you know, it's rigorously tested and checked.
And I suppose, James, part of the reason would also have been, or for you not even to be able to go into that, was the constraints you were working not just on the NHS filming, but the circumstances in which you were limited with what you could actually film, and then having to work with the footage you had before lockdown. So I can see the point. But yes, on the website, there are details as to who can and can't give blood. And
yeah. I think, you know, if they really want to encourage people to come through and donate, they need to be able to, like James, who's given his consent, follow his journey through from making that decision to reading the literature to having a, I suppose, censored medical interview and then do it that way. But it's just the constraints of the NHS, really. But no, it was good. But is much more involved than they showed.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. James, did you want to quickly comment to that before we go on? Because we are now going on to the second film, but if you just wanted to come back on that one.
You are exactly correct on everything in terms of like the restrictions they gave us in terms of filming. They told us various things for we did try to include a shot, I think it's in there, of me looking at the questionnaire and briefly filling it all out. However, we were told we're not allowed to film the one-on-one screening, and we're not allowed to film the actual needle going into my arm. Understandably, which is why we tried to use archive to get as close footage as we could. We weren't allowed to film the needle coming out. We weren't allowed, I think we weren't allowed to film the nurse's face either. But along with anyone else, we weren't allowed to film any of the NHS staff, even like the when the person going through the health checks with me, even before just the extensive questionnaire. And you're very correct on it, was a long questionnaire. And they also said that regards to testing, just what we were saying about earlier, they do a brief test in the one-on-one session before, and then they also, before your blood goes anywhere for donations, they do extensive tests on it. Not before it goes anywhere for transfusion, they do extensive tests on it to make sure you've got no sexually transmitted diseases or things like that, just to make sure that your blood is compatible and safe to use.
Yeah, so thank you, James. That was really useful. It's so interesting, isn't it, when you watch a film and actually have the director able to sort of explain the making of it. You don't always get that chance. So thanks very much, James, for coming in and sharing that. So let's go on to the next film, which is titled Windrush. And the team behind this film are Cameron Tate, Amber Tolley, Matteo Armazzani, and Emily Cardew. And the poem that features in the film is by Savannah Southwell. And Beverly Dowdell, who features in the film, is here today. So after the film, we will hear from Beverly and you'll have a chance to ask questions.
The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans.
Recruiters came to our island for nurses to be found.
Well, there are many immediate evils of the coloured invasion.
There was no one to meet me at the airport when I arrived.
Discouraged but full of hope, they sailed for Britain.
Not knowing the hardships to follow.
We believe in preventing the evils which must result from mass coloured immigration by removing the problem completely.
I'm a hard-working Jamaican with big island dreams of becoming a nurse for the mother nation, all not quite what it seems. They needed us to go to England to support the national health. Islanders like me came from across the Commonwealth. Raised in Jamaica, the beautiful Caribbean, in those days under British rule, I learned about Florence Nightingale and Mary Seacole. My desire in helping others within my community inspired my nursing training in Jamaica's top university. Recruiters came to our island for nurses to be found, even Enoch Powell, which may now seem profound.
We must be mad, literally mad, as a nation.
In 1971, my new adventure had begun. I was full of anticipation and excitement, as I was young. There was no one to meet me at the airport when I arrived. I was told to take the train to Southampton. I was feeling nervous inside. I boarded at the nurses' home, did a postgrad in intensive care. Nurses did everything back then with passion, hard work and flair.
Yes, thank you.
I would strip the patient's bedding and clean around the bed. I took temperatures, blood pressure, pulse, making sure they were also fed. 30 to 40 patients would be in one ward. I checked and recorded everything. No chance of being bored.
Just seeing the patient off the ward.
I've seen a lot of changes over the years. My role as a nurse has been rewarding and at times has brought me to tears. My nursing career has served me well and made me who I am today, a young woman who came from Jamaica, now England, my home to stay. The Windrush generation played a major part in serving and building the NHS. Our hard work and dedication has made it world class and is still the very best. The national health is vital, is a national treasure. We must appreciate its importance and value it forever.
That's brilliant. That was really good. And it again sort of brings forth another topic that's very much in the news as we sort of talk about the diversity of that's represented in the NHS staff and the number of people from all around the world that work there. Before I take any questions, again, you know, if you've got any questions, please raise your blue hand in the participants list or wave. I can see Jenny has raised her hand. But just before we take questions, could I ask Beverly to just say a few words about what it meant, Beverly, what it meant to you to take part in this film and to be able to share your story? Do you want, Beverly, hold on, you need to unmute yourself.
Right?
Yeah, that's brilliant, carry on.
Okay, I can't remember, I can't believe I said all those very profound things. I was interviewed at Black Heritage, which is the group that we had, and my interview was recorded, and from the recorded version, the poem was written. So I'm no poet, thank goodness. But that was actually how it happened. And I believe very much in the National Health Service because I grew up on an island where if you didn't have the guinea, I don't know if everybody know how much it's a guinea. If you didn't have the guinea to pay the doctor, you couldn't be seen. And that didn't include the medication, which you then would have to purchase. So when I came to England and realized that there was a National Health Service, A, that I could work in, and B, that if you're ill, you had treatment on the point of need. That was revolutionary to me. So that is all I have to say at the moment.
Okay, well, for those of you who haven't met Beverly before, Beverly, as you said, is from Jamaica, and she qualified as a nurse before coming to the UK, and then worked for the NHS for nearly 35 years. I hope that over the next few minutes, Beverly will be able to share some of those experiences. But if I go to Ginny first, Ginny, do you want to ask your question?
Right. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Beverly. It's lovely to see you again.
Thank you.
I was so privileged with other members of our group to be able to go to Black Heritage and talk with Beverly about the possibility of being involved in this project with the students. Beverly, I just wanted to ask a question about one of the profound things that you said in the poem, that you've seen a lot of changes over the years. Could you give us a few examples of change?
Well, one has got to accept that the medicine and nursing is evolving, and things will change. What concerns me is the nursing that I learned, or I was trained to, seems to have disappeared along the wayside. I'm not certain if this is true, but this is my perception. I was a ward sister when Southampton University decided that, it was decided that Southampton University, instead of training on the old system of working on the ward and going into the school and working on the ward, you went straight into the university. And I remember reading the syllabus that was presented to us at this meeting. And I said, when you have nurses with all these wonderful degrees, who is going to wash the bottoms? And I was told, oh, there were nurses, they still had to wash the bottoms. And I said, if I spent 4 years doing a degree, menial tasks like washing bottoms, I was never going to do. And indeed, I was a nursing sister on this ward, like I said, and these nurses came onto the ward. And we had a system where you had to clean the ward every week, every weekend. The ward had to be cleaned. So each nurse, each member of staff had a job to clean a particular area. And the student nurse said to me, I'm not here to do that. And I said, what exactly are you here to do? I'm here to do blood pressures, take drugs, and read ECG. And I kept thinking, no. So we had quite a heated conversation as to what the nurse should be doing. And indeed, cross-infection was one of the big things that really, and to this day, I've got this thing about cross-infection and cross-contamination. And I'm not certain, at least I hope to goodness, that actually this is carrying on the wards. While I have nothing against nurses being high-powered and learning things, I still believe that nursing in a lot of cases is very basic and should then when you learn these high-powered things, you should bear in mind that you are nursing a human being, and they should have not only the respect but the care that they receive, and that includes all the care, not just the high-powered bits. I hope that answers. I'm retired now, so I'm no longer a giver of care. I'm a recipient of care, and I feel that I would like that I received the care that I gave. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much, Beverly. It sounds like there's perhaps still more care in the blood donor section than in the people who are so busy working on the wards, practical wards. Thank you. I think there are probably other nurses or ex-nurses in the audience as well, and they might like to respond on that.
I've got a few hands here. Oh, okay. I've spotted Fiona's iPad, Ian's. Fiona, would you like to go first? I've seen Ian's iPad and Helen as well. So Fiona, if you'd like to go first, please.
You have to unmute. Oh yeah, I'm unmuted.
Yes, no, you're fine now.
Okay. I'm an ex-nurse as well, and go along completely with what Beverly said. For me, a nurse was somewhere to take care of the patient, no matter what it was, whether it was putting talcum powder between their toes, we used talcum powder in those days, between their toes, making them a cup of tea, doing some fairly high-powered technical thing. It really didn't matter, but the feeling was that they should feel better, feel more valued and more cared for when you left them than they had when you arrived.
Yes.
And there should be no hierarchy of tasks. It doesn't matter, whatever it is that it takes to make someone feel better. And having been a patient not so long ago, I felt that was lacking as well.
Beverly, did you want to respond to Fiona before we go on to the next question?
Well, I feel very sad to hear that, and it makes me quite anxious if I ever have to be a patient in hospital. When I never mention, this is one of the things I do, I never mention that I was a nurse. If I go to my GP or go with anybody, because one of the things that I do at Black Heritage is for those people who would wish it, I will go with them to the doctor, because sometimes people are not as articulate in describing their needs to the doctor. They get what I call white coat anxiety. So I have all these little side words that describe what I'm talking about. So so sometimes I've actually gone with patients, with members from my community, and act as advocate for them. So I just feel that we just need to be a little bit more compassionate and kinder if we're not doing it. But I really worry about myself when I go old and do lally. Am I going to get the same care?
That's a big worry for everybody, isn't it? Thank you, Beverly. We'll just take the next question. And yes, Ian's iPad. Sorry, I'll have to say that because I don't. Yeah, carry on. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
Yeah.
There we go. I know Bev.
Oh yes, we know each other.
We do know each other. And I can say to Bev, I was the last cohort through Southampton with the all-style training where you trained on the ward.
Yes.
But I have recently as well been an invigilator at the university. And I was doing some medical exams there. Bev, you'll love this one. Doing some nursing exams that were all on the computer. And the nurses came in to answer the question with a double-sided A4 piece of paper with notes on. And when they pressed the computer, up came a little man sitting in the bed. And they said, oh, it's John, that's fine. We know all about him. So the tutor came in and asked me how it was going. And I said, well, it's a bit, I'm not sure about this. They've all got crib sheets and they know what the question is. And she said, oh, yes, they're told that they will have a choice. There's 6 questions and they will have a choice of one. And they can have crib notes on those 6 questions. So I said, that's fine then. When I come in to A&E, I'll phone up first and say, I'm just coming in with a fractured neck of femur, so you can all run away and know what I'm coming in with. But Bev, on the plus point, Southampton University Hospitals a couple of years ago had taken on 20 student nurses that they were training on the wards. So they were actually starting to put them through the old style training that we had. So it's starting again. It's going back full circle.
That is reassuring.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really reassuring. I just want to, because there's suddenly lots of hands going up. Helen, did you, Jane, did you want to respond to that particular point? Or Helen, is yours on the same point, or is that slightly different?
I've got a different question.
Right, Helen, did you have the same point that Ian's, the point that we just discussed? Did you want to comment on that?
No, I've got a completely different question, Padmini. Do you want to take the people who just indicated?
Yes, I think I saw Jane, and I didn't make a note. Oh, yes. So Jane, do you want to go first, and then Anna Ritholch, you're next.
It's very small, but I want to put something in on the positive side to this. My husband's been in and out of hospital for the last few years, and he has had excellent nursing from student nurses recently out of the nursing school. When they come round to do their particular placements, they've been on his ward doing placements, and I have no complaints at all. And you couldn't really tell the difference between the nurses who'd gone through the university and the ones who trained on the ward, because there were also ones who, because they couldn't afford the fees, because the grants weren't there anymore, were training on the wards rather than going through the university. And actually, you couldn't really, there was a difference of style, but there wasn't a difference of compassion at all.
Well, that is reassuring.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Jane. And Anna, did you want to comment on this?
Mine was on a different point. I'm afraid, sorry, I've got it in the wrong order. So if you'd rather I came later, I will. Helen was first in the queue, I think.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Helen, where are you? There you are.
I'm here. Beverly, I thought that was a smashing film. It was too short, and although it was lovely, the poem that you read, I would have liked to have heard a lot more about your own experiences. And I would like to ask you how much racism you experienced. We can't deny that we are an institutional racist country, and I have heard black nurses saying that patients have said, I don't want you touching me, and I just think that's just awful. So could you give us some examples, if you don't mind, because people need to hear it.
I came to England at age 24. I was a fully qualified nurse and a midwife. I'm saying to you, and you might not want to believe me, but I never encountered racism in the West Indies. I worked in Jamaica and I worked in the Cayman Islands before I came here. The first day I landed, the senior nursing officer said something to me, which I interpreted as racism. And I will repeat exactly what she said to me. She said, as a matter of interest, how much money did you bring with you? Because so many of you people come to England and expect the English government to pay your fare back to your islands or where you came from. I was actually quite shocked, but at age 24, I was not the most diplomatic person in God's earth. So I told her, if I get stuck in England, my father would send the fare for me to come home. And more importantly, I have a little piece of rock in the Caribbean waiting for me. So she needn't bother about England paying my fare back to Jamaica. Well, unfortunately, that was the whole experience in the intensive care after that fell apart, because there were some pretty unpleasant things that was said and unpleasant things that happened to me on the unit. But I was determined that I came to England to do a course in intensive care nursing, and I was going to follow it out to the bitter end, which is basically what I did. But yes, I had racism at me, but some of the times I just thought to myself, I felt there were battles that I could fight, and there were battles that I had to leave alone. But I must say that I never did use the race card, because I found my own way of dealing with racism. And now I just, most of the time I've grown a very thick skin. So, but it's there, and it's sad that it's there, and it's, I've been here now from 1971, so that's an awful lot of years. And you should think that all these things should be, out in the open, and people should respect each other, and we are there to help to get people better. And with that, you would think that there were people with a little bit more discerning, but no, it's still there. I was once told to go away and get a white nurse. And I said to this gentleman, are you saying that I'm incompetent? No, he said. I said, go away and get me a white nurse. And this happened on the surgical unit at Southampton General Hospital. I must say the consultant was very upset because I'd written it in the patient's notes. So, this consultant, I won't mention his name, but he actually did tell him that I was part of the team, and if he wouldn't see me, it means that he couldn't see he the consultant couldn't see him as well. So but I'm retired now for 15 years. I hope to God it's not happening still. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Beverly. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is something that, as you say, we hope isn't happening, but you never know, that there might be things that you do keep reading about it. So I'm aware of the time running away with us, and I've got a couple of sort of people's raised hands. I've got Anna. Did you want to come in? And then we've got one more hand I've just seen in the list. So if you wanted to come in, Anna.
Yeah, Okay, just very briefly on that point, every time I set foot in the hospital, I just am so grateful for all those foreign staff who are there, the people from all over the world. And I think it's of tremendous value, not just for the nursing care and the medical care that we get, but also culturally. And I do sometimes worry about what we're giving back to the countries from whom we're taking all those staff. I've been assured that when nurses are recruited from the Philippines, it's very carefully done and to make sure that there is no, that it's of benefit rather than of harm to the Philippines. But I do feel, in a way, it always seems to me that we're still the colonial country sucking people in who've been trained according to our standards and maybe not sending people back in return, or I don't know what the outcome ought to be.
You know, only last week, I went down to Black Heritage and we were all sitting in there, all older citizens, and we had a joke. And the joke was, oh, I only intended to spend 5 years. And I laughed and I said, I only intended to spend 10 months. So, you know, life comes at you from different angles and you have to make choices at the time. So I got married and my husband couldn't go to Jamaica to work. So I had to stay here. So, you know, I'm here. I've got 3 grandchildren, so I am unlikely to go home because I will miss my grandchildren. So that is it, really.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I actually benefited and my family benefited from me coming to England, because it meant I was able to send money home to care for my other brothers and sisters. I'm the eldest of 12. So I was able to send money home. I still refer to Jamaica as home, please note. To care for my brothers and sisters.
That's interesting, isn't it? You still consider that as home. Now we've just got time for one more question, and I've seen that Adnan Chaudhry has had his hand up in the participants. Yes, would you like to?
Yeah.
You're still on mute, Adnan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was very powerful, account that Beverly's given us, of her experience working in the NHS. I mean, the reality is, that, alongside that personal kind of racism, we've had institutional racism within the NHS in terms of, issues to do with promotion, where qualified nurses, from the Caribbean and from other parts of the world have seen, nurses they've actually sort of helped to train, have overtaken them when it came to promotion. And I mean, all this has been, very well, well documented, by lots of different research over the years. And the other sort of aspect is, the issue that our governments, and particularly, the Conservative government of the last sort of 10, 15 years have never properly acknowledged, the contribution and the hard work that's been put in, by, our nurses, our doctors, our care workers, who come from all over the world.
Yes.
And particularly, at the height of the pandemic, we had the most ludicrous situation where, some, depending on what contracts, some people had, were working in the NHS, they may well have to pay for their own, treatment and so forth.
Yes,
The most horrible sort of stuff in the midst of pandemic. And we know during the pandemic, the first sort of, were people that tragically lost their lives were from, Black workers in the NHS. And so, I feel, really angry because I have family that work in the NHS as doctors up in the Midlands. My youngest cousin Imran is a consultant up in Manchester, with lung disease. So he's been in the front line, and Beverly will understand that, having worked in those sort of, with the pandemic. And my sister's husband's a doctor, been leading on the vaccination program in the Black Country. And, they themselves have actually sort of experienced that. But I think that a lot of their anger is with the government, that, that's actually, firstly in terms of their treatment, but also I think they're really angry the way the NHS is going, in terms of, this creeping privatization that's actually, is happening. We've seen wholesale, privatization of our practices, being taken over by firms from America and elsewhere. And I think, it's great to, to have these discussions. But I think for me, it's important that we also actively continue to campaign and continue to highlight, what's actually happening to our NHS. To our NHS. If we are, otherwise, I think we may well, sleepwalk ourselves into a private, health system, and this is exactly what this government, without openly saying so, wants to do.
Well, as you know, what Mr. Trump had promised to do if he actually became president again, I don't know what is actually happening, but I worry that things are actually going round the back door. Something is happening, and that seems to take the limelight off what is actually happening behind. And then I had a reason to experience the care of the elderly, social care, because my husband, 5 years ago, my husband developed Alzheimer's. And I felt to myself that I was a nurse, I knew what I was doing. And even I got lost in the morass of all the what was actually happening. And we're not looking out. I was once told that you viewed a country for its power by the way you looked after the elderly and the vulnerable and the children. And I'm afraid Britain is no longer great, according to the Calypso song.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Beverly. Thank you for.
I'm sorry I sound very negative.
No, I think you've made a point that a lot of people agree. I can see everyone on the screen, and everybody agrees, and we're all concerned. And this is precisely why those of you who aren't already, please support the work of Southampton Keep Our NHS Public. You've got join the mailing list, which is on the mail. Just email the message people on skeepnhspublic@gmail.com, or follow them on Facebook, and please support the fantastic work that the SKONP are doing to fight precisely these issues that you've all brought in. I'm going to pass on to Jane, who would like to just round up and say thanks to people. So Jane, did you want to?
Yes, I think there's a slide which will give you a list of those. Maybe it'll come up. Yes, but there's so many people that we need to thank for helping to make this project come into reality. First of all, Tony Steiger and Kate Driscoll. I'm really sorry that we weren't able to hear more of Tony, and the students at the Solent University TV production course who made the actual films and amply fulfilled SKONP's brief to them for what they wanted to do. I'd like to thank Padmini Broomfield, oral historian, who helped us make our initial pitch of the project to the students and explored with them ethical issues about doing oral history. And of course, to thank her for her very, very able chairing tonight. Then there's Joe Smith at City Archives, who helped the students to use the archives a lot, and she'll also soon be helping us to deposit the films appropriately there so that they can be used for research in the future. We thank Southampton City Council for a very generous grant from the community chest, and Joe Hughes at the grants office, who helped us with our application for the grant. The grant supported 4 of the 8 films we made and aspects of their screening and publicity, which we haven't yet been able to use, like the screening that we hope to have at City Eye soon, for which we thank Susan Beckett, because it was a very important component in our pitch for the project, and she supported us in many ways in shaping the project also. We want to thank Dan Crow at A-Space and God's House Tower, where also we are supposed to be having a screening of the films. And we look forward to both of those as a real way to see the films alongside other people, side by side, in a screen with communication amongst us. We'd like to thank all the people who volunteered to appear in the films, not only those that you saw tonight. Thank you very much, Beverly and James, but others who were prepared to be interviewed, but who got stymied by the pandemic, and the students had to find other ways of doing their films. And finally to Joe Dukes for facilitating this Zooming session, and also the previous one on the 5th of July. And I'll hand you back to Padmini now to wind up the session.
Thank you, Jane. I just want to thank everybody who's come today and sort of so kind of enthusiastically taken part in the questions and the discussions, because you've all made some very valid points, and I'm sure that we could continue this discussion for quite a long time. So please do get involved, have those discussions offline with SKONP, and where you can support each other. I just want to point out that you've seen 2 films, and Jane mentioned that we've seen the 2 before, but there are still 4 other films that were made by students, and you'll see on the screen the next sort of 4 films that remain to be seen. We're hoping that these are then screened, public screenings at God's House Tower and City Eye, but we're also looking for other places that all these films can be shown and shared much more widely, perhaps also use their potential for learning and engagement with young people, whether it's in schools and elsewhere. So if any of you present today have any suggestions for venues, or if you have contacts, or how this really amazing piece of work and the work that SKONP do, how this can be disseminated and shared much more widely, please get in touch with the team at SKONP. And it would be fantastic to be able to share this work much more widely and keep those discussions that you've been making today, but for which we haven't had enough time to go into. There's so much more we would go into, but that, this is not the end. I'm sure that this will carry on. So please do join in, support the work, and do get in touch. And apart from that, all I'd like to say is thank you very much to everybody who was here, and thank you, Beverly and James and Tony. Really sorry to not be able to. Oh, Tony's got something. I don't know if everybody can see, but Tony says sorry. Oh, it's really sorry not to be able to hear you, but technical glitches. Hopefully, at the next screening, Tony, you'll be able to join us and lead the whole way forward. Thank you very much, everybody. Good night.